Have you ever wondered what the deal is with the Abductor Virgins? Like where they came from, why were they made, why did they all have that sad looking face? I hated the Abductor Virgins in Elden Ring. They were like my least favorite enemy. I would stand afar and kill them with magic because I just hated being grabbed by them. It was so scary. But at the same time, they are probably the enemy that has stuck with me the most visually because there's just something so eerie and curious about their appearance. So there's a whole lot going on when they attack you, which is easy to miss because of how quick the animation is and everything that's going on. First, we have the inner arms, which are a contraption of serpents that come out and grab you, which is fitting given the supreme deity of Volcano Manor being a serpent. And you also have this mist of blood that comes out, presumably originating from a prior victim, or maybe it's just the fuel that they run on. And then you have the doors in the interior, and they are all covered in slabs of meat. And for what purpose, it's unknown. For all we know, these machines could be alive in some way, and the slabs of meat are the food that they run on. And maybe that makes the blood mist their fuel exhaust, kind of like a car. If this is the case, this might explain why there are so many of them out of commission that are lying around Volcano Manor, because no one has been feeding them. This second volume of Future Press's Elden Ring book that has the bestiary, it goes over all the enemies in Elden Ring. This book describes them as horrific automatons created under the supervision of Praetor Rykard to capture live victims and return them to Volcano Manor. This book really doesn't explain a lot about them. It just talks about their design and what they're weak to, where you can find them, and it doesn't say anything about the way that they look. So that is why I'm making this video. There are a couple of variations in their design. Some have retractable chains outfitted with guillotine blades, and others have Geyser's wheels, which is a torture device also used at Volcano Manor. All of the models feature the same figure, a very serene, sad-looking woman holding an infant. And to me, this is the most mysterious thing about them. Forget the slabs of meat. Who is this baby and who is this woman? I have always thought that the Iron Virgins were modeled after Lady Tanith. This has been a long-standing belief of mine since I saw them, because who else would they be modeled after? Lady Tanith was the lady of Volcano Manor, the ruling proprietress. She was the most important person in Rykard's life, and visually to me it looks like they are the same. They kind of have the same mask or headpiece. And I think that their design tells a story about her. I think this is some environmental storytelling to fill in some of the blanks about her life. First off, they are called virgins, and this is probably because Tanith was childless. This was a title that was actually given to Queen Elizabeth I, who produced no heirs of her own, and thus she was called the Virgin Queen. And Tanith's adoption of Raya seems to support this idea that Tanith didn't have any children of her own, but she clearly was maternal enough to be a good, loving mother to Raya. So if we take the machine's name and its design, you have this woman on top, and then you have her abdomen, which is filled with snakes, and it is inhospitable for anything that it pulls into that area. And I am interpreting this as Tanith's womb being barren. Either she could not have children of her own, or she miscarried, or she just actually was a virgin because she was never able to consummate her marriage to Rykard because of his very changed appearance, and thus she was never able to give birth to children that she desperately wanted. Because if you look at the baby that she's holding, this baby doesn't look like it's sleeping. It looks like it's either dead or it's stillborn, or it's just supposed to be representative of babies Tanith wanted, because I don't otherwise know why this woman would be so sad. I just think the design is a very clever way of telling us, the audience, that Tanith cannot, for whatever reason, have children. The design of this enemy is very clearly based on the Iron Maiden torture device, which is a staple for any torture museum. These horrific iron coffins were said to have been used during the Inquisition, in which the guilty would be enclosed and subsequently fatally pierced with iron spikes, lining the doors. Although it's likely a myth that the Iron Maiden was actually ever used in real torture, there is a historical account that might be real about a very, very old device called the Iron Apega, and this was a device that was built by the Spartan tyrant Nabis, who created this machine to execute his victims. So Nabis would tell people to go up and hug his wife, Apega, and the doors of the machine would latch out. The arms would latch out and grab them and crush them. And this sounds a lot like what the Abductor Virgins do. Last year, I uploaded a video in which I talked about some of the mythological inspirations in Elden Ring, and I drew a connection between Tanith and Rykard to Jezebel and Ahab, who were said to be the most evil king and queen in the Bible. There were a lot of similarities between these characters. Ahab was called the most evil king in all of Israel, and he was very wicked, and Rykard is, of course, arguably the most evil character in Elden Ring, and they each married a foreign woman from a different land. Rykard married Tanith from an unknown land, and Ahab married Jezebel from the Sidonian kingdom, which was a Phoenician city-state. Ahab and Jezebel worshipped Baal, which was a deity that sustained itself on blood sacrifice, child sacrifice included. And likewise, Rykard and Tanith also sustained their snake deity on blood sacrifice. And both Baal and, is it Agli or Igli, however you pronounce it, both of these gods were fed by blood by means of fire. And visually, I think that Rykard looks a lot like King Ahab as well. So this has been my thought for quite some time now, that Tanith has been an inspiration of the Phoenician priestess Jezebel. But while working on this video, I came across something that further supports my theory. And when I looked into it, it also revealed some more disturbing things about Volcano Manor that I originally overlooked. So when you finish Volcano Manor, Patches gives you a pair of dancer's castanets, and it's this little finger percussion instrument that is described as having belonged to Tanith when she was dancer. The passionate dance comprises no seductiveness, but merely a dignified beauty, and we know that when Tanith was a dancer, that is when Rykard fell in love with her. Castanets are very widely known today as a percussion instrument that is used in the Spanish dance, the flamenco. While it's possible that Tanith could have been a flamenco dancer, I don't think that was the case. It just doesn't seem like that's the vibe she gives. She doesn't give a very passionate vibe that I would associate with a flamenco dancer. So, but I could be wrong, but I don't think she was. Instead, very conveniently for my theory that Tanith was inspired by Jezebel, castanets are a much, much older instrument that originated from the Phoenician civilization. Yes, and the Phoenicians are the ones that brought it to the rest of the world because they were a very big merchant civilization. And again, the Phoenicians are the same group of people that Jezebel hailed from. And in Phoenician culture, women, much like the men, were able to lead in worship services. Well, as worship services, I mean ritual sacrifices and whatnot. These little castanets were used in the ceremonial and religious displays performed by the Phoenician priests. So it's very possible that Jezebel, being the daughter of a priestess and having as much autonomy as a queen or a princess because the priests worked in the same capacity as a monarch in Phoenician city-states, Jezebel could have used castanets in her rituals that she led. And that is more so what I think these dancer castanets might represent. I think there's something much, much older than the flamenco percussion instrument. I think that this is just another clue that she has ties to Phoenician origins or inspirations. As I spent way too much time reading about Phoenician culture and history, for the purposes of this video, I got way off track. I learned something else that answered another question to another video I uploaded last year. I uploaded a short video about why there were living jars under Volcano Manor, and I proposed this quandary to my viewers, why this graveyard was here and why there were so many jars here. And while there were a lot of really creative answers given in the comment section, I think I may have stumbled across something that really ties all of this together. The Phoenicians horrifically used child sacrifice in some of their worship rituals, and this was usually done in response to extreme situations like famine and war, but it has been confirmed that yes, they absolutely did engage in child sacrifice. And the sites of the remains of their victims where they were buried are called Tophets, and these burial sites were located in their own separate precinct outside of the general city area, and they held the remains of all of the jars that held the remains of the sacrificed infants and children. As I was looking at photos of these Tophets, they really struck me as being reminiscent of the graveyards in Elden Ring, the way that they are so haphazardly thrown together and the way that they appear clumped. Even the urns that are covered with these large slabs of inscribed stones called steles, the urns plus the steles and the way that they're all crowded, it looks a lot like the disorganized mess of graveyards and headstones that I see in the game. And in photos of these excavations, you can see how the urns are located in the ground here, and it gave me the same visual imagery as the living jars next to the gravestones. And I don't know if this is kind of like, what's it called when, confirmation bias? I'm not sure if that's the right thing, but because I already saw one thing, I was trying to see another thing. This might be a little bit of that. But my main point for bringing up the Tophets is that it might possibly be another connection that Tanith has to Phoenician origins. And it might now give a very different, very dark meaning to the figure in the Abductor Virgin. This weeping woman, maybe she's not sad about the baby she couldn't have. Maybe she's in some way remorseful about her role in these blood sacrifices. This would explain the juxtaposition of having this gentle, serene woman holding a baby and then this chamber that is supposed to crush you to death and spit out your blood. This would explain why the two exist. I think it really fits the theme and the vibe of Volcano Manor. It might make a little bit more sense rather than saying, okay, Rykard wanted to make a machine based on his wife's barren womb. Because that seems extreme even for Rykard. That would be such an insult to Tanith. I also came across this image of urns that were excavated from a Tophet. And apart from noticing that these urns looked similar in design to the living jars, there was something here that really jumped out at me. Two-handled, plain buff pottery burial urn with bulbous body contains bones of children dedicated to the goddess Tanit. Tanit was a Carthaginian goddess, and Carthage was a Phoenician city-state. Tanit was also the consort of Baal, the god worshipped in Phoenician culture. Do you see how all of this is coming together? So not only do they share the same name, Tanith was also married to a deity. And the Carthage Tophet, which has been protected and is a World Heritage Site, is a children's burial ground that at one time, thousands of years ago, was dedicated to Tanith and Baal. So is it possible that the graveyards that we see in the game are in fact modeled after these Tophets? If we can make all of these connections and say, okay, yeah, maybe the designers did pull a little bit of Jezebel and Phoenician culture, and yeah, they did picture the Tophets and the urns. Did they make their way into the game in the design that we see here? I really like investigating the background of things that I see in games and movies and media. I like knowing the backstory to things. I'm a detective at heart. So this is just an enjoyable video for me to work on, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. And I'd love to hear your opinions on this subject. I just wanted to talk about this because it was something on my backlog that I had put together a while ago and just wanted to kind of finish. So yeah, I want to also thank my channel members. Thank you so much for your support for my videos and my work. And if you'd like to sign up to be a channel member, you can do so on my main page. That's all I have to share for now. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Bye!